You are listening to Reduce the Stigma, a CJ106 docu-series funded by the Community Radio Fund of Canada. This series aims to provide information on local services, bring to light the work of healthcare professionals, and most importantly, reduce the discrimination faced by people with direct lived experience with a mental illness.
Hello, my name is Janek, and this is Reduce the Stigma. As this is the first episode of Reduce the Stigma, welcome, and we hope that you find this series on mental health resources in the Westman region both informative and helpful. We are glad to be bringing to light many issues of mental health and wellness, which in the past had been long relegated to hushed tones or suspicious whispers. Today, it seems we are in a new era of openness about mental health. We want to talk about it because it is something that affects all of us. The more we can talk about it, the more we can destigmatize what we had previously held as fearful or unknown or as something that other people went through. For a mental illness sufferer, talking about it might mean that some people are listening. It could mean that their psychological concerns are being taken seriously, but it definitely means that they are not alone. Chances are you or someone you closely know currently lives with a mental illness. 1 in 5 Canadians will experience mental illness regardless of age, sex, class, or culture. Yet, despite an explosion on information in popular culture surrounding mental health and well-being, stigma remains a barrier to community acceptance, diagnosis, and treatment. 90% of people who are depressed will never seek treatment, while 80% of those who sought treatment noted improvement to their life. And the wide range of available treatments are helpful, including not only medications, but a wide variety of therapeutic approaches. There are many preventative or healthy practices to alleviate symptoms or redirect thought patterns and promote healthy habits. And in this episode, we will learn about the peer support therapy supported by the Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba. MDAM Outreach Manager Connie Ricker will join us in an interview in just a little bit. But first, a quick description of mood disorders by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders is a group of diagnoses where the main feature of an underlying issue is a disturbance of mood. And this includes both elevated, hyper, or manic states of mind, as well as the many depressive conditions. There are also the moods that cycle between elevated states and depression, such as in bipolar disorder. There are also substance-induced mood disorders, as well as those that are caused by other medical issues. It is also important to note that the prevalence of mood disorders is widespread. 1 in 8 Canadian adults will face a major depressive episode in their life. 1% will have direct lived experience with a bipolar condition. Mood disorders are the main reason for hospitalization of children under 17 years. The Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba has been actively helping people since 1983 and has 8 branches throughout the province with its head office in Winnipeg. While strong advocates and educators for mental health awareness, MDAM peer support services are the foundation for its existence. MDAM stresses the importance of hiring people with direct lived experience with mental illness, and that reflects their mission statement, helping ourselves, helping others. The nonprofit organization offers support group meetings specific to depression and anxiety, postpartum depression, and bipolar. They conduct family and friend support groups, LGBT support meetings, and also maintain a group for members of the Sioux Valley First Nation. To give us more detail about MDAM and many of its services is Connie Ricker, Outreach Manager for the Westman region.
My name is Connie Ricker, and I'm the Outreach Manager for Mood Disorders in the Westman area. This area, it covers the same region as Prairie Mountain Health. I've worked in healthcare for over 25 years and decided to start helping people on a more frontline basis after graduating from Brandon University in 2013. And I graduated with a BA in Sociology and a minor in Native Studies.
In this section, we will briefly provide an overview of MDAM operations. MDAM has a mission statement valuing helping ourselves, helping others. Could you expand on that concept, please?
So essentially, what happens in mood disorders is when people come to us and they're looking for help and resources in relation to managing their mood disorder, quite often we like to bring those people on as volunteers or even to come and move in to facilitate meetings. Essentially, what that statement means is that part of helping ourselves is really helping others. It makes us feel better. It makes us feel like we're actually working towards wellness.
Does it also provide some sort of sympathy or understanding, empathy, values, people who have an understanding of what other people are going through?
Yes, for sure. An example would be someone who has bipolar disorder. For someone like me who doesn't have it, I'm not familiar with the symptoms and the problems that come with it. And so really the best person for them to talk and share with is a peer, a fellow peer, somebody who has the same mood disorder as they do.
Can you tell me about the organizational status of MDAM and where do you receive the most funding?
Our funding is received through donations. We also fundraise, and if you like, you can become a member of MDAM, and there is a small yearly fee, and you get mailings and newsletters and things like that. These funds allow mood disorders to provide much needed programs and services to individuals and families who are affected by a mood disorder. Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba is a nonprofit organization. It was founded by Gwen Finnan in 1983.
Can you briefly tell us anything about the history of the organization or how these services came to being? Also note that there's many locations in Manitoba.
MDAM is a nonprofit organization that was founded by Gwen Finnan in 1983, and originally it was called the Society for Depression and Manic Depression in Manitoba. It's since changed to Mood Disorders, and today MDAM operates throughout Manitoba, supporting those affected by mood disorders as well as their friends, their family caregivers, and supporters. We currently blanket the entire province of Manitoba, so we have eight locations with the head office is located in Winnipeg.
Okay, more specifically now, what different peer support services are available locally? And who can come and who attends these meetings?
In the Westman area, Mood Disorders has developed the following meetings. We run a bipolar disorder support meeting, a general mood disorder support meeting, depression anxiety support. We also have a meeting for family and friends, and we've just established a postpartum depression support and support as well for the LGBT community. I also facilitate what's called a closed meeting for the residents of Sioux Valley First Nation. It's important to know that all of the meetings are free. There's no need to call ahead and register, and all the meetings can be found on our website. And I should also add that a formal diagnosis is not necessary to seek out our services or attend our support meetings. Sometimes people are very nervous about support meetings. Walking in, they don't know what the format's going to be. A lot of times people come, and sometimes people just come to see me. They want to look around my office and just see, what goes on, what kind of people are using the services. There's a lot of stigma there as well. There are times when individuals are not sure what supports they need and will make an appointment to see me privately. That happens quite a bit. I do a lot of telephone and email support as well. MDAM does have a 1-800 support line for times when I'm not in the office. They can call that. It runs out of Winnipeg. And they also have what's called a postpartum warm line. And that's run by 2 nurses. And for women that are experiencing postpartum issues, they can call and talk directly to them. There are many resources available to those experiencing a mood disorder. We work along with other agencies in Manitoba, but it's important to know that all inquiries and information always remains confidential, as that's part of our policy.
Another service that is available locally is the SAD lamps and rentals. You can purchase or rent these SAD lamps. And what is SAD, for one, seasonal affective disorder? You could expand upon that. How do the lamps aid people with SAD? And so how do you go about getting this service?
SAD, or seasonal affective disorder, is a type of depression most commonly seen at the same time every year, generally late fall or early winter. It can be seen during other seasons and may increase in severity as the season progresses. An example of that would be some people who have bipolar disorder can develop seasonal affective disorder in the spring. So it varies. What SAD does is it causes changes in your mood, your physical health, your thinking, and your behavior. SAD is typically seen more in women and naturally in regions that lose light over the winter months. So, Manitoba is prime time for seasonal affective disorder. What happens is when we start losing light in the fall, it disrupts your biological clock, or what's called your circadian rhythms. It drops your serotonin levels, and those are the levels which affect your moods. And your melatonin levels are interrupted, and that's the substance that makes us drowsy. So that's why a lot of people feel tired all the time. In relation to SAD, your first plan of action should be to really attend your physician, go and see your doctor, and relay your symptoms specifically to rule out any other causes for your symptoms. Purchasing or renting a SAD lamp is a natural way to combat that light deprivation, as it is to be used in the morning according to the directions on the lamp. So, for about 20 minutes in the morning, wherever you sit, if it's at the breakfast table or in front of the computer or the TV, just have that lamp sitting there for about 20 minutes, and generally that's going to give you that extra boost during the day.
How are people generally referred to MDAM? What can one expect when contacting MDAM?
Referrals can be both formal and informal, but generally they're informal, meaning they've gone to see their community mental health worker, and their community mental health worker has suggested they contact us. More and more people are becoming aware that mood disorders is back in the Westman area, and so there are a lot of referrals coming from Prairie Mountain Health. Also, people have gone and checked the website. I do advertise in other areas, social networks and things like that.
Why is it important that MDAM hires people who have direct lived experience with mood disorders?
So, what I want to say about that is it's very important to realize that no one is really exempt from a mood disorder. We all experience depression or anxiety at some point in our life, and the strategies we use and the resources we access that have helped us can in turn help others. And this is something that mood disorders really promotes. An example would be, I'm not familiar with some of the side effects for depression, so I'm not the best person to talk to about this. I mean, I can relay my empathy, but really what you want is a peer. You want to meet somebody who's had that same experience. It's also really good to note that our life experiences can always benefit someone else. And in turn, when we start helping others, that's really helping us as well. One of the things that I always start with when I go out and educate, or when I'm speaking to groups, is I like people to stop and reflect on all of the life experiences that they've had, good and bad, up till today. And those experiences really are at the core of who we are. When you experience something unpleasant, or you're dealing with a lot of depression and anxiety, you're going to have to find a way to cope with that. And one of the ways that people cope is by using alcohol. They can use alcohol, drugs. Something that's very common with people that have bipolar disorder is they quite often go on shopping sprees. They'll burn through a lot of money. There's a lot of impulsive behavior. And the way I like to explain that is that at the time when that's your coping mechanism, it works. It actually works. So the drinking takes away your anxiety, it takes away your inhibitions. The shopping gives you that little release of endorphins, you feel better. The drug, you feel more settled. But eventually what happens is they stop working. But the way people are viewing you now is they're not really viewing you as a person who has a problem. They're viewing those behaviors as problematic. So instead of looking at you, they're looking at the alcoholic or they're looking at the drug addict. So what happens when they are focusing on your behaviors is it makes it very hard for a person to really start looking at what is the real problem. And when you say, do stop drinking or using drugs, really, you're not going to move forward in your life until you start addressing that mood disorder. Why are you depressed? What makes you anxious? Anxiety is normal and natural to the body. It's what protects us, helps us survive. But it's how you use anxiety where it can become unnatural. So if you develop a social anxiety and you refuse to go out, it's unnatural. But generally, anxiety is something to be faced and confronted. You can't run from it, you have to face it. So getting back to talking to people about this, what I really want them to do is I want them to really stop and think, there's some things I need to address here. My coping methods are not going to be healthy until I start addressing these issues, address my depression or my anxiety or whatever mood disorder I have. At this point, what I like to tell people is that you have to look at your team. So essentially, you're the captain of your team. So wherever they are at that point, they have to move into recovery. So for people, say, who have been hospitalized and they're having problems with their mental health, they're there to gather their resources to get their feelings and moods stabilized, their mental health stabilized. But when they move out into the community, that's really where recovery, it needs to flourish there in their community with their loved ones, with their family and their friends. So they have to look at who's on their team. And if they get out in that community and they're still struggling, then I tell them their team is not big enough. They have to make it bigger. And, a lot of the strategies that you use may fail, but all I ask people to do is if you find somebody's on your team and they're no longer productive to promoting your well being and good mental health, and you have to remove them, or you have to change doctors, or, you don't like your counselor, your mental health worker, is just please replace that with something else and move forward. There's a lot of different strategies that people can use in relation to improving their mental health. When you have a mood disorder and you're depressed or you're anxious, or even if you're experiencing bipolar disorder, sometimes it doesn't matter what job you go to, because if you're not feeling mentally well, then you could be hypersensitive to any environment. So really the goal is to start addressing your mental health. And I really want to stress that when you have a mood disorder, it is a medical illness. A lot of people don't treat it that way. But once you get people thinking, this is a medical illness, this is something that's chronic, I have to deal with this every day. And once you start to liken it to something like diabetes, then you start to take that stigma away from your mood disorder.
MDAM stresses peer support as a therapeutic technique. I would just like you to be able to describe a little bit more about that process, how beneficial it is.
One of the things that I see happening here in Westman since I've been here in the past year is that a lot of calls I get, or even people that attend the support group meetings, they're very surprised that there is a community very similar to the problems that they're experiencing with their mood disorder. It's unfortunate that in the rural area, there's not a lot of support for people, and there is a tendency to self stigmatize, meaning you don't want people to know, you don't attend the doctor in your community, you don't attend the pharmacy in your community, you really want to keep it quiet. But when you come to a support group and you see the people that are there and they're dealing with the same feelings, side effects and things, that really is adding some really important aspects to your team. So the feedback that you get from your peers, it gives you something to think about. The strategies that they use give you something to try. The side effects, say, that you experience from your medications, also give you something to think about. And you just get that support that's critical to dealing with your mood. Some of the things that I see at the meetings are people that I've seen in the office say they're not sure they want to go to a meeting and they come see me and they find out what it's all about and they go. It's actually a place where they can reveal information about themselves and their life experiences that they can't do anywhere else. So a lot of times the people that are experiencing that mood disorder, their behavior because of the mood disorder can make their home lives very problematic. It can get disrupted. There are also times when a young mother, for example, doesn't want to reveal the extent of her depression or the extent of her postpartum depression for fear that Child and Family Services will become involved. And an example of that would be she's experiencing postpartum depression and her method of coping is alcohol. So that stigma prevents her from actually getting the help she needs. So if she starts attending a postpartum group or a depression anxiety group, it's an opportunity for her to not feel ashamed of what's happening. And essentially what I tell them is, look, the more work you do on yourself, the better person you're going to be and the more you're going to thrive in your community and in your family.
Yes, I can understand why peer support groups would be very beneficial for most people, but I sort of think that sometimes maybe peer support group might not be for everybody. And there might be some situations where it's not beneficial, maybe for the group, maybe depending on the individual that's involved. Do you possibly have any experience with that?
Well, one of the things I'd like to stress is as the outreach manager, I am the one that places people into facilitator positions for them for the meetings themselves, and I do monitor those meetings quite closely. I always support the facilitators, maybe if they've heard something that's upsetting, if they see anything that's inappropriate. I personally have attended facilitated meetings where the individual wants to really focus on medication or they want to focus on the negative aspects, and really it's okay to talk about those, but it's important to state that at mood disorders we are not doctors, we're not pharmacists, we don't promote medication talk, and if you're not careful it really can take over the group, and that has happened a few times where I've had to step in and really stress that when you take medications for your mood disorder, they're only going to help you 30 maybe 40% if you're lucky, so the rest of the work is up to you. So really, we should be focusing on that, focusing on positive strategies. Sometimes people are just not well in their mood disorder. There may be some inappropriate language or feelings expressed that we need to redirect and correct. So it does happen. I think it applies to anything. If you have somebody that comes into the group that's using profanity, I mean, we don't know that a person might be verbally abused in the home. We don't know those things. So there are rules of the group.
MDAM also places a great emphasis on public education, awareness, and advocacy. Can you expand on any of these, please?
In the Westman area, I do go around and I do a lot of education and speaking. Sometimes it's about something more specific, depression, anxiety. Sometimes it's about mood disorders. It's very important for healthcare aides, as an example, to know what is a mood disorder, what are the kind of things you're going to see. It's important for kids in elementary school right up to grade 12 to know, how am I going to learn how to handle my anxiety or my depression? What resources are available to me? In relation to advocacy, I'd like to really stress that one of the things that we do at mood disorders is hospital visits. So it doesn't matter if you're in the hospital for a broken leg or problem with your depression. If you need to talk to somebody, if you're from a community that you're not getting visitors, the major fundraiser that the head office does is what's called the In the Mood Gala. Some other programs that are available in Winnipeg is an art therapy program for kids, and there's a music camp.
Well, the show is called Reduce the Stigma, and I would like you to be able to address some issues of stigma for us, please. So, do clients that you work with, are they experiencing discrimination because of their mental health issues? And how are some of the ways in which we can help to reduce discrimination or stigma of people with mental health issues?
One of the more common themes I'm seeing here in Westman in relation to stigma is I'm getting a lot of calls and having a lot of visits with people who have experienced stigma on the job in the workplace. It's not as acceptable in the workplace. There's still a lot of work to do in relation to that. An example of that would be if your mood disorder is getting worse. I'll use the example of bipolar disorder, and your medication's not working. You're feeling depressed. You're feeling anxious, and maybe at times you're feeling quite manic. Makes it difficult to communicate with other people on the job, makes it difficult to take direction. Sometimes what happens is you end up having a major meltdown, and then that time off work is enforced. These kind of problems, it's not their fault. They're being directed by their mood disorder. And what they really want from me is, what strategies can I use in the workplace? How can I get back in the workplace? The number one question is, do I have to tell people about my mood disorder? So those are some of the ways that we help them troubleshoot their way through that. As I said before, stigma unfortunately is very evident to me in the rural areas. And the reason why I say that is because there is a general theme to people who are coming from rural areas. As I said before, they don't attend a doctor in their community, they don't attend the pharmacist in their community, or present at hospitals in their community. They don't want people to know. And so essentially what's happening is self-stigmatization. They don't want to talk about what's really going on. And when that happens and you keep this kind of information to yourself, that is self-stigmatization. And what people get when they start talking about it is they start normalizing those experiences and feelings and behaviors. It becomes more acceptable as to them as a medical illness, something that needs to be treated every day. But having said that, there are very evident problems out there. If you live in a rural community and you only have access to a community mental health worker, say once a month, what happens if you don't get along with that person, or if you're not finding the answers that you're seeking? You're very limited. What happens if you can't travel?
I was thinking isolation and mobility issues must play in rural people.
For sure. And one thing that I can say, one thing that I do here in the Westman area is I live rurally, so I completely understand what that's like. What I ask people to do that can't come in is to look at the monthly schedule. And on the day of, say, an anxiety depression meeting, call me and we'll set aside a half hour and we'll talk on the phone. So it's not the same as being in a peer support meeting, but it's allowing them to talk and allowing me to give them some more resources and maybe some more strategies. Another thing I see in relation to stigma is I'm seeing a lot of men who are not wanting to talk about their depression or their anxiety, and generally they don't move ahead to gather resources until they're somewhat in crisis, and it's at that time that the family's quite disrupted, work is disrupted, and their well-being is generally not very good. So I can't even say that it's because they feel it they'd be perceived as weak. I would just say that, just as a general consensus, I do see men not as willing to talk about some of the more serious issues like sexual abuse or some of their childhood experiences.
Well, this has been a lot of great information, but perhaps you could talk about the website of MDAM and what one can find there.
If you go on the mood disorders website and you're really looking for some good information, on the left hand side of the main page, you're going to see resources. You're going to click that and you're going to go to current publications, which is going to take you to what's called information sheets. And there it's going to bring up a huge list of very easy to read, easy to understand, informative articles on many, many aspects of mood disorders.
All right, and just provide some contact information for people who would like to reach MDAM locally, please.
Mood Disorders has an office in Brandon, 940 Princess Avenue. Our number is 204-725-1232. You can also reach me by email, which is connier@mooddisordersmanitoba.ca. It's important to note too that I'm only in the office from Monday to Thursday. I don't work Fridays. If you can't reach me in the office, please leave a message. I always return my calls.
Well, thank you very much, Connie Ricker, for all your excellent work at MDAM, Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba.
Thank you.
That was Connie Ricker, Outreach Manager for the Westman Region, Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba. I hope that you have found this episode helpful and informative. Once again, you can reach MDAM in Brandon, Manitoba at 204-725-1232. My name is Janek. Thank you for listening to Reduce the Stigma.
You are listening to Reduce the Stigma, CJ106 docu-series funded by Community Radio Fund of Canada, narrated by Jan Eck, produced by Jan Eck, Matthew Higgs, Tyler Addison, and Janice Sproul.